Hello and welcome to this lesson on exchange surfaces. So in previous lessons we've looked at diffusion and we've looked at surface area to volume ratio. In this lesson we're going to look at how exchange surfaces in biology allow the movement of substances via diffusion to happen more quickly. So by the end of this lesson you should be able to define what an exchange surface is. You should be able to explain how some exchange surfaces are adapted in animals for efficient diffusion, and you should be able to explain how some exchange surfaces are adapted in plants for efficient diffusion. So let's start with a keyword, and our first keyword is the word exchange surface. An exchange surface. Now an exchange surface can be defined as a surface within living things that are adapted to speed up the rate of diffusion, osmosis, and active transport. The examples of exchange surfaces that we're going to look at today, so we can just put underneath here, e.g. the lungs, the small intestine, and in plants, the leaf. Before we do look at these examples of exchange surfaces in a bit more detail, we can just state some common things or some common adaptations that exchange surfaces have. So we can just put some common adaptations of exchange surfaces include ... We can say that they are highly folded, What this does is it increases the surface area across which diffusion can happen. So are highly folded, and we can say increases the surface area across which substances move. We can say that they have a big, a rich blood supply. So a rich blood supply. And we can say that these, or this, maintains a big concentration difference, And we can also say usually they are very thin or have thin membranes. Which reduce diffusion distance. So these reduce diffusion distance. So exchange surfaces are surfaces within living things that are adapted to speed up the rate of diffusion, osmosis and active transport. Examples include the lungs, the small intestine and the leaves. Some common examples or some common adaptations of exchange surfaces include that they are highly folded, which increases the surface area across which substances can move. They have a rich blood supply, which maintains a big concentration difference, which speeds up diffusion. And they have thin membranes, which reduce diffusion distance. So let's have a think about some specific examples then. The first one we're going to think about is the lungs. So if you can put the subheading, the lungs, and we can say that the lungs take oxygen from the air and put carbon dioxide back into it. So we can say the lungs exchange oxygen or O2 in the air with CO2 in the blood. So essentially we're exchanging oxygen for carbon dioxide. Now if you look back at our PowerPoint, we've got some images which I'm going to post on here because they will be easy for me to label. So the lungs have inside of them something called alveoli, and they have millions of alveoli. What this means is, so we'll put in regs, it's important first, that the lungs contain millions of alveoli, open brackets, air sacs, where gas exchange happens. Now the fact that there are millions of them gives the lungs a large surface area. So we can say that millions of alveoli give the lungs a large surface area. Now if we focus on one alveoli, it would look like this. We don't want to paste, we want to copy, don't we? It would look like this. So if I paste our alveoli down here, each alveoli has a rich blood supply which removes the gases away from the areas they need to be in, maintaining a high concentration gradient. So we can say each alveoli has a rich blood supply. And what this means is that a large concentration gradient is maintained, speeding up diffusion. So we can say that the blood supply maintains a high concentration gradient. And if you look back at our lesson on diffusion, you'll see why that is important. So the lungs exchange oxygen in the air with carbon dioxide in the blood. They have millions of alveoli which increase the surface area, speeding up diffusion, and each alveoli has a rich blood supply, further speeding up diffusion. Could you please put the next subheading? The small intestine. I hope I have my pen. The small intestine. Now the small intestine absorbs nutrients from the food we eat. So the small intestine absorbs nutrients from the food we eat. Okay, and if you have a look back at our PowerPoint on slide 3, there is a zoomed up image of a part of the small intestine. Okay, so I'm going to make it a bit smaller because we don't need it that big. And we can say that the small intestine has lots of folds known as villi or villus. Okay, so the small intestine has lots of folds known as villus. V-I-L-L-U-S. Villus. By having lots of folds, it gives the small intestine a large surface area. So lots of folds gives the small intestine a large surface area. Okay. Each villi has its own blood supply which maintains a high concentration gradient. So we can say that each villus has a rich blood supply and we can add underneath that by saying that this maintains a high concentration gradient. A high concentration gradient. Okay. So the small intestine has lots of villi which increase its surface area, and it has a rich blood supply which maintains a high concentration gradient so that we have faster diffusion. Finally, don't know what I've just done. I don't know how to rectify that, so I'm going to clear the screen. Good job I was going to anyway. Finally, for today's lesson anyway, put the subheading, the leaf. The leaf. Now the leaf exchanges gases for photosynthesis. Okay, it exchanges gases to allow for photosynthesis. So the final slide on our PowerPoint looks like this. We don't need it that big, so I'm going to make it smaller. And we can say that leaves have a wide flattened shape and we can say that this increases surface area. So this increases surface area. We can also say that they are very thin. So leaves are very thin, and we can say that this reduces diffusion distance. This reduces diffusion distance. Is there anything I've missed? We can say that they allow gases in and out of holes in the bottom, known as stomata. So allow gases to diffuse in and out of the leaf through holes known as stomata. Now we are going to be looking at the structure of the lungs, the digestive system and the leaf in topics later this year. So we're going to go over these in more detail then. However, for now, you should now be able to tell me where an exchange surface is. You should be able to tell me how some animal structures are adapted to allow for efficient diffusion, and you should be able to tell me how some plant tissues are adapted for efficient diffusion. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next video.